honestly, each and every single time, I could lose myself in that song. It's a masterpiece from Robert John Collins. I love it. Good morning to Julie. How are you? Hope you're keeping well. Thank you for stopping by to today's live stream, everybody. It's look, right. Let's just get into this. First of all, um, I've done my level best to steer clear as far away as I possibly can from any of the video related stuff, from any of it. Because I never want to to see or hear any of it before these types of things occur. But with something of this magnitude, it is difficult to stay away from the information, right? So let's we'll come back to that in a second. Good morning, Jennifer. Good morning, Cindy. How are you? I'm very well. I hope you're doing well as well. What else we got? We got Janny in. Good morning from Denmark. Good morning to you. Wish I knew some Danish to greet you in your fellow language, but I don't. My friend Kristen could probably help you out, as in be my translator in this area. She's from Norway, but she speaks a bit of the lingo as well, which is a digression in and of itself and arguably irrelevant, but there we are. Good morning, Mr. Efraf. Right, we're all in. I take it we all know why we are here today. We have the underwater basket weaving seminar. I'm kidding. So this, yeah, I've done my best to stay away from anything sort of detailed. I suppose would be the best word. I've done my best to stay away from anything that is over the length of a TikTok video, because having 2 children of prime age for TikTok usage, the sounds and videos permeate the household on the reg, so to speak. So I am aware of a number of videos and details going around, and a number of sound effects of her testimony, which have in no way biased anyone's view within the household, but it is kind of given me an insight into the way that it's being portrayed with the whole stepping on the bees video. she mentioned her dog, which I presume will come up in this. Don't mind, I do speak and write English. I'm married to an English bloke. Oh, well, there we go then. He can translate for my guttural waffle when it tends to go off the track. So a few of you have mentioned in the comments a few times the sound that can happen during these live streams. Just to make you aware, I do have a microphone that's on order. I got a notification from Amazon the day before yesterday that it's now been delayed. So we're stuck with the old faithful for just a few more days. So until such time that changes, you're just gonna have to deal with it. Or you are more than welcome to turn to another video. That is entirely your decision. So yeah, we're gonna go through Miss Heard's testimony. I'm genuinely at this stage a little mixed bag of excitement, of nerves, of really this kind of I don't know the emotive word that I need. Unexpectedness, right? I don't really know what's about to happen here, because it's been going one way for so long, hasn't it? Obviously, with it being his go first, and now it's their team, so it's the chance for them to have their say, and this is going to be the turning point, or not. So it's going to be one of those things. Hello, Kirsty, aka Sugar Mama. Nice to see you again, virtually. Um, so yes, right. Let's do this. Let's not beat around the bush any longer. Let's get into this and see what's cracking. So Amber Heard, day one, testimony in full of the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. So this is close to a 3-hour clip. Okay, just to kind of state the obvious, we're going to go through as much of this as we can without making it unwatchable, right? Because the point from my perspective, those of you who just watch the trial for whatever reason that you watch the trial, there are many, you are best served just watching the original link from the Law and Crime Network. But for here, we are about people reading. We are about logic, reasoning, breaking down the observations that are seen based on the information that is available to us here in this context. And this is why I'm continually saying, if you guys have more information that I aren't currently aware of, because I don't avidly research this case, I'm not being paid to do so. So all I do is I watch this video and I talk about what I see and what I remembered. Right? That's pretty much it. So Cindy mentioning the video of her holding the dog out of a moving car window being played all over the audio of her testimony was telling, to say the least. Time to don the weight as all. Good morning, Tanya. Good morning. And good morning to Cindy as well. Let's do this. Let's see how we get on. Right, we got the sound turned up. Brace yourselves, guys, because the adverts are normally quite profound. They're normally quite profound. Giselle, good morning. Here we go. Okay. Already series of eye blocks. Neck freezing behavior
right.
on the
Thank
walk.
you.
Sorry, I'm doing it already. I'm not muting. So we've got eye blocks, neck freezing behavior on the walk past Johnny. So that's still where the tension lies. Bowing of the head. Now, there are those that would immediately attribute that towards guilt, which is not necessarily the case at this stage. We've just got an apprehensive quality towards the battle, apprehensive quality towards the knowledge of the kind of questions that are going to be asked and the kind of information that she's going to have to talk about.
Your Honor, will you please state your name
Yes, it's Amber Laura Heard.
and what is your address?
I live in Yucca Valley, California.
And how old are you, Amber?
I am 36. I just celebrated.
Okay. And do you have a daughter?
I do. She also celebrated her birthday recently. She's 1.
Okay. Concerning that she is a mom of sorts. Interesting. Okay, so what we've got here, first of all, right, is the overexposure of tactics. The overexposure of tactics. Look at the smile. Look at the information. Look at the she's one. The coy attitude towards the nerves that are trying to be presented here in this moment. Not directed towards the person that's asking the question. Even when it's something as inconsequential as a name and knowledge about your family and your age, it's a case of, yes, you ask the question straight over to who I'm looking at and who I need to convince of whatever I need to talk about. Whereas if you look at those right the way across the board that were interviewed on the other side, who were asking the questions, they got their responses, unless they were asked to communicate. Or a point or a matter of a story to the actual jury to help them understand. That's when they turn. That's how you get the established nature of somebody's agreeableness, somebody's openness towards the conventional notion of conversation, right? When you are performing, You know exactly who you're directing these kinds of qualities to. You hear it in the theatre all the time, in that you as an actor, you're told not to put your back to the audience, right? Unless it's, a specific director or a specific kind of style. But the basics of it would dictate that you were to give your performance to the audience, because these are the people that you have to convince. These are the people that are inside in there. Okay, so information coming through. She's a surrogate, right? Still concerning nonetheless, but she's a surrogate. No, fair enough.
And what is your profession?
I am an actor.
Are you?
mostly.
Arguably.
Okay. Now, why are you here?
Why are we all here? Hey, why are we all here?
I am here because my ex-husband is suing me for an op-ed I wrote.
Now, now, correct me if I'm wrong, as I'm sure you probably will. Didn't Mr. Rottenface state in lawyer speak that all Mr. Depp had to do and his team had to do were to ultimately prove that that she was the one that wrote the op-ed, and that she didn't just okay the article and attach her name to it? Case dismissed. We're done. She's just admitted it. Faceplant. Well done, woman. You're off to a great start. We're 54 seconds in.
And how do you feel about that?
I struggle to have the words. I struggle to find the words to describe how painful this is. This is horrible for me to sit here for weeks and relive everything. Hear people that I knew, some well, some not. My ex-husband, with whom I shared a life. Speak about our.
Okay, so let's look at a couple of the the verbal content things at the moment, right? It's horrible for her to have to sit here for weeks and relive everything. Now, reliving difficult times, reliving arguments, reliving negative experiences, absolutely. But at this stage, what's been drudged up is nothing regarding the allegations that he has done to her. 90% of the qualities of the information so far has been directed in terms of what she's done to him. So why would that be causing her as much pain as she's trying to communicate here? That's question one, number one that I have at this moment. Now, if you look at the ways in which the hands haven't moved from between the legs, we can see from the direction of the clothing that's where they're going. They need to be able to do that to facilitate this kind of shoulder movement, pressed in against the legs. Okay, to create that kind of tension, that kind of difficulty and motion. What you're doing to your body is you're holding your chest tight. So if you guys there watching out in the ether, you were to put your hands together like this, put them between your legs and push down to try and create that kind of notion, your chest becomes tight. So your breathing changes as a result. Now, at this stage, it is not possible for us to understand whether or not this is coming from an authentic place, as in it is the emotional state that's driving this particular motion, or it is the motion that's driving the attempt at a physical state. That is something that we have to question with the fact that they are both actors, right? To try and separate those two the acting from the non-acting, the acting for performance for work and the everyday life scenario would be a struggle when there is a question of deception hanging over anyone. Okay? Your previous knowledge that comes into that. In the same way that you might question the legitimacy of a boxer who spends his days fighting in a ring in a specific way. But were they ever to be attacked outside on the streets, it's a very bloody different thing. But the question of their fighting capabilities would be brought in, right? So you have to ask yourselves these things here. This is the constant battle. So at this stage, we already have a dissonance of sorts being presented, which we haven't seen in anybody else so far. We haven't. So that's something that we need to look at here in terms of her breathing and her control, right? And the more we go through this, just because I've seen it already, so we can all be prepared for it moving forwards. The study of emotions, whether that be from a neuroscientific background or a psychological background or from many different scientific backgrounds that it comes from, when you collate all of it down and boil it down to its most movable parts, what you get is when you truly feel something, it is difficult to shift from one thing into another, right? Because you have the constant battle of emotions trying to settle versus one popping up. I mean, you take, for example, something as explosive as surprise. You get the, oh, and then you're breathing, you have to settle down. You don't go, oh, anyway, and then move on. The important thing to notice when we're watching her movement, listening to her breathing, is the changes. They are coming like this, which already fits in line with Dr. Glasses lady. Oh, what's her name? Dr. Curry? I want to say. Dr. Curry. So let's continue.
Our lives in the way that they have. This is the most painful and difficult thing I've ever gone through, for sure.
Now, there was a trial in the UK in July of 2020 where Mr. Depp had sued the Sun newspaper and Dan Wooten. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And what was your level of participation in that lawsuit, in that trial?
Well, I was not party to that lawsuit. I was a witness, I suppose the primary witness, since it dealt with the truth of the relationship that I shared with Johnny.
Again, dealt with the truth that I shared. Point number 2 about her being involved in the writing. Okay. Now, again, you could look at verbal content and be asking yourself a couple of questions. You could be asking yourself, all right, this is the most painful thing you've ever had to go through. Surely the IPV would have been painful to go through. But then you could argue that also reliving it would be pretty painful to go through as well, having to go through it a second time. At this stage, that's a question that we have to answer because there is no clear indications one way or the other at this stage, other than to say there is an element of control going on to her behavior. There is an element of forced retention to her breathing to control this kind of labored response that's happening there, and it's all being directed towards the jury. All of it. That's a tactic born right out from the start. So again, when you take away everything else and you just look at the moving parts, like I've been saying in the podcasts so far, look at the specificity of what can be proven, take away everyone's opinions and everything else, including my own. Just boil it down to what's been proven so far. versus what hasn't. That's what you can do to try and give yourself the moving parts in the situation. Here, what we know is she's inhibiting her movement, specifically, which will control her breathing, which will give outward oppressions. Her expressions are changing rapidly from emotion to emotion, indicating that the state in which it's being presented is not truly authentic. There is a tactic being presented in terms of the playing up to the jury, but there's only two questions that we have been able to kind of play devil's advocate for in terms of understanding one way or the other that still point towards a negative lights for her, but could be argued the other way as well in terms of her verbal content portraying. This is just something that we keep in mind moving forwards, right? Because it might go one way or the other.
And what, if any, role did you have to play with respect to, for example, witness statements and testifying?
Objection, compound.
Here we go.
I said, for example.
Overruled.
I had to write, I think I gave 7 witness statements under oath testimony. I sat on the stand for 4 days under mostly cross-examination.
You see this app right here? It's called Audible. Using just this little app on my phone,
Delightful news, love.
And up until this point, it was the hardest thing I had ever had to do.
So we've got a proclivity towards hyperbole in the dramatization of speech, right? Arguably, I have a similar notion. I'll use 56 words when 3 will do in this area. But when you're looking at it, it's the hardest thing I've ever had to do. It's the most challenging thing I ever had to do, right? For you to have so many conflicting notions of that, it's difficult to understand where your opinion of what is challenging or awful lies. The "your" being her in this scenario. So there's a lot of conflict going on with her understanding of that. Okay, and if you look at the notion of wrinkle remnants, I've mentioned it several times, right? I've done whole classes on the topic, but just for a brief rundown, if you've never seen anything about it before, here it is, right? If you look at my head, which arguably in this small little corner of the screen that you can't do, I'm one for talking like this all the time because I get into everything I'm talking about. I want to inhabit the information. So naturally, when I'm not feeling anything that would be described as intense or anything at all, if I were asleep and you were watching, I don't know why you're watching me sleep, but this is a terrible example. As I said, Chronic Pain, the microphone is on its way, right? You're just going to have to deal with it for the time being. Just bear with me. Just bear with me. You would be able to see that there is the remnants of expression on my face, even when it's not being engaged because it's overused, right? Now, when you look at the lip depression here, when you look at the lip depression, there is no remnants of that on her face from previous use or previous exposure. So what you would know is that lip is being pulled down. It's being pulled down. And if you look at the nature of her experience of sadness, you could watch her films, right? Not in terms of her quality, but the way that she portrays it. The audio sounds fine from my end. Thank you, Cindy. I appreciate that. Okay. When you look at the background in terms of her displays of how she does this, right? This is where it goes down to how she pulls, to how she displays sadness in film. The closest example to this that I have off the top of my head is Drive Angry. If you look at that, constant pulling down, but this is masked sadness. She's not really feeling it. She's acting. if you look at the other moments throughout her interviews, throughout this whole debacle, right, the notion of her displays of sadness have changed. So we have an incongruence over the authenticity marker, which means there is more indication towards this being a portrayal than this being something authentic. Which, if you link it to the previous of this, shows an attempt to change emotional state. However severe or not the attempt is, what she'll be getting as a Razzie. Right? However, you can do this yourself, right? If it is that you wanted to get more adrenaline for your body for whatever kind of situation, you might start your breathing going. You might start this changing, and then your heart will follow suit, and then eventually it picks up and it changes, even on the most minute level, because you're just doing that by yourself. If you're looking to have emotional stigma and the rest of it, this is why actors are paid the millions upon millions of dollars that they are. So we've got strong indications here.
Thank you, Amber. I'm going to take you back, and if you can just tell the jury a little bit about your background. Tell us where you grew up.
I come from Austin, Texas, a small town outside of Austin that you probably haven't heard of. No one has. It's called Manor. And I was raised by my mother and my father, and I grew up with a little sister, although I have a big sister as well.
And your little sister's name is?
Her name is Whit Hurd.
And how much of an age difference is there between the two of you?
Whitney and I are about 1 year, I think we're 16 months apart, so right next to each other.
And what did your father do for a living?
My father broke horses and did construction, he painted houses.
You see how the breathing's all of a sudden changed? You see how it started to settle? Like this? There was the scene setting attempt in the question, where you saw this kind of behavior. Back down the expectedness of where it was going to go. Talking about family. This then changes immediately. Breathing shifts, and you can even see it in the crease marks in the clothes on the side. Her hands have relaxed.
And hunted and fished, but that was for fun.
And what did your mom do?
And now gone back to the intense.
She worked for the state of Texas.
Let me just, since you talked about the breaking horses, can you just tell the jury what your role is in assisting your dad on that and what is involved in breaking horses?
Objection leading.
Can you just tell me about?
Overruled, good.
You just got to stay on, basically. I would help him. I was more of a crash test dummy. You know, when you train a horse, it's a wild animal. It doesn't necessarily like to be ridden. And
so I'll just mute this while it's going on as well, just so we can better hear it. This is just a lot of background data, but you can see without the words as well the shift, the relaxation that's come through. Now, if this is the most difficult thing that she's ever had to do, she's certainly coping with it well. Certainly coping with it well.
with training horses, I guess the key things are to not show fear, not get intimidated, not show fear, be tough and calm.
This is the tactic that's presenting itself. They're going to use that. This is what I'm thinking at the moment. They're going to use that for the reasons why she behaved the way that she did during the alleged physical assault. If this is a tactic, that's where the conversation will drive itself.
Life and see things and do things. So I was in school and really pushed myself to, I just always pushed myself to be able to accelerate the process. I wanted to get out of school as fast as I could, and I wanted to do more things with my life than stay in Texas.
So what types of things, so where did you go to school when you were younger?
I was a scholarship kid at a Catholic school growing up, several different Catholic schools, but they were always in the other, on the other side of town, in the wealthier part of town, and I grew up quite working class, and thankfully.
All flagrant attempts to endear her to the jury. Flagrant. Because there's the implied separation through money, through the perception of class. I'm working class, I'm just like you.
GED and SATs early, and I did that and placed out of school and effectively left school at 16 years old, I believe.
And what did you do for work during those younger years?
I took any job that I could. I worked at my father's construction company, sometimes, just administrative stuff. I mean, it was a small company. But I answered phones, and I worked at a modeling agency that was also, offered photography classes, makeup classes, hair and makeup classes for people that were pursuing a career in entertainment.
Interesting. Objection, speculation, hearsay. Interesting about those makeup classes. That's all I'm saying at this stage.
And I started taking classes that I paid for by working there, effectively as a trade. And I eventually worked there long enough to be able to pay for my headshots, which are the pictures that you use in the industry to promote yourself, in whatever, acting, modeling, or both.
Okay. And what, if any, charitable work did you do when you were still young?
It started off as a requirement for the school I went to, and then I liked it so much, I think, because it meant I wasn't at home, and that was important to me. It's just...
Another narrative presenting itself here with the using charity work to get you out of what she's probably going to talk about as an unhappy home. In the particular setting, I wanted to get out, but I didn't want to get out and self-destruct. I didn't want to get out and I don't know, do whatever that teenagers going through terrible times do. I wanted to get out and do some charity work. I wanted to get out and give back. Salem, you're very welcome. Thank you for the lovely comment. This can be pushed again, right? This can be pushed, but it can be argued in terms of why you didn't give those millions of dollars to the UCLA and the children's charity. You love charity so much. Interesting.
To not spend time at home, and I really loved meeting people, so I worked at the soup kitchen every morning before school, during the school year, for about 4 years. I didn't go on weekends, but on weekends I would do various things. Worked at children's, museums, typically, because they would work with younger volunteers, and mostly soup kitchens and things involving...
This is what I mean in terms of the preparation, right? This is what I mean. It's no secret that all trials go through a preparation stage for the witnesses that will be called, the kind of questions that will be asked, how you're supposed to behave, all of that kind of stuff. But this is just a chance for us, as the observers, to understand the tactics that he used. And here we have right from the get-go. So what are we, 9 minutes in? There is the real attempt to push her as a victim of circumstance and a lover of people and charity and the halos and wings and all of that other kind of stuff. But it's still been directed to the audience, and we're still having leaks in terms of this behaviour here, right, which is the degree of tension and discomfort with whatever's actually going on inside here.
Children. I worked at with deaf kids for a while, and yeah, I love it.
And when you worked with deaf kids, what, if anything, did you do to learn to be able to work with them?
Objection leading and 404. And relevance, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Well, I taught myself how to sign basic sign language, and then I pursued it. I audited a course at the community college, which I ended up going to.
Back to Amber,
to
please.
get out of high school early.
That's why we're here.
Later on, but I would audit classes.
Again, this is the whole part of the thing that kind of bugs me. Just because I'm not interested in the kind of TV show nature of it. I want to see the non-verbals and looking at other people don't really help in that scenario unless they're going to do a side by side. Then I'm all for it. Show them all side by side because you get the best of both worlds in that scenario.
I did a small job in Texas where I played a part in a movie, and the actor in the movie that I was playing opposite had an agent visiting him from LA, and I met her on set, and she said that she had heard about me from another bit part I did. You know, I was taking jobs in Austin for really anything, to be an extra, to apply I did makeup once.
Are we all with makeup again?
No job was too small or, for me. So I put myself out there, and she had heard about me, and she said, I have heard about you.
Just as a side note, that when you go through, I don't know if this is the same the world over, just to qualify this, but this is particular to the UK. When you do qualifications in makeup for movies, film, TV, even some holistic applications for those training specifically for the beautician industry, bruises, cuts, abrasions are on a foundation level of things that you have to go through. Hashtag just saying. Right? It goes on throughout these qualifications.
You in this town, and I'd love to meet you in LA if you're ever out in LA. And I was like, when can I come? And she made an appointment with me for the following week, and I used all but $180 or something to get out there, and I landed. I didn't know anyone. I was 17, and I've effectively been there ever since, I suppose.
So when you arrived in Hollywood, please tell the jury what you did to get moving there, get going.
I went to every audition, every casting, every meeting, every appointment that I could. I put myself out there. I didn't have a car because those were expensive, so I took the bus.
Again, the continuation of trying to humanize working class. There are no separate lines between you and me. Oh dear.
Around LA, it was before smartphones. I had a Thomas guide in my bag and a change of tank tops. Not that it mattered, but I went to about 10 auditions sometimes a day and would change clothes if I needed to in the back of the bus I was taking, and I just hustled from one audition to the other. And I got a bit part on one thing, and then I got a bit part on another thing, and then eventually my roles kind of became more important or bigger, and it's been a slow progression, I guess, since then, of doing either tiny bit parts in bigger movies or doing, larger roles in movies that no one would see. And I guess, it still is kind of like that.
So I'm going to ask you to go from 2002 to 2009. If you could just describe for the jury a little bit what types of parts you had. I think they've indicated they didn't. You have not.
Again, so this is they're trying to overstate the work ethic, the commitment, the hard struggle that she's had to get to where she is. Why is this relevant? Other than to attest to the character of a person, to help people better understand her story and better feel sympathy for her story, because that she has had all of these humanizing qualities spoken about. This is where the tactic is presenting itself en masse. It is a little like sitting too close to a TV, in that yeah, I can see what's going on, but it's very bright.
Not been well known here in this courtroom compared to Mr. Depp, so perhaps just take them through a little bit of that.
Yeah, that's fair. I did small roles in big films like Zombieland and Pineapple Express and movies that were well known. My first one was Friday Night Lights. But again, I had small roles in those bigger films. And then I would do larger roles in kind of smaller films. Like I did a project where I was the lead in a John Carpenter film, and he came out of retirement to do that. And that's kind of how it was in terms of my career for those initial.
Which is irrelevant. Irrelevant. What person that's gone after a career of some sort that they want hasn't taken the bitty small jobs to get to the big ones? I would argue none of them. None of them, right? This isn't a story that is unique to her. This is the book called A Hero's Journey. It's the formulation for a large portion of most of those storylines. Star Wars was written on a hero's journey, the struggle to eventually become a master, and the journey that you go on that is like this. This is the foundational elements of that. This is social psychology 101. Whether it is a story or not, I'm not disputing that. But the overstating of it is designed to endear humanizing qualities to such a degree that you aren't able to rationally break down the information that you are seeing. And correct me if I'm wrong, which I'm sure people will do, wasn't she a stripper for a time? No, not that I hold any kind of a disregard for that. But certainly en masse, it's looked down upon. Funny that wouldn't be brought up. Sorry, Tanya? Yes, I have. I did one of Johnny's previously. Look for the Johnny Depp discussion. It was about a week or so ago.
That first initial 10 years or so was just going from slightly bigger role to slightly bigger role, and just working my butt off.
So I'm going to take you up to 2008. Did there come a time that you auditioned for the Rum Diary?
Yes, I auditioned for that in about 2008, I believe.
Please describe for the jury your experience in auditioning for the Rum Diary.
Well, I auditioned a few times, which is common in my work. You know, you get a call back, as they say. And I think I had at least one, maybe two callbacks with the director. And then I got a call saying that Johnny, who at the time was, I think I knew that he was producing it as well, was doing a project that was something very personal to him. He was reprising his role as his late friend, Hunter S. Thompson, and it was a very important project to him, and that he wanted to meet me in person. I thought I would be going for maybe an audition, but it was just a meeting. I went to his office and met with him for a few hours.
And what did you talk about during those few hours?
We talked about books.
Must not make jokes about what they talk about.
And music, poetry. We like a lot of the same we liked a lot of the same stuff, you know, obscure writers and, you know, interesting books and pieces of poetry that I haven't heard anybody else reference or know or like. And he was very well read and charismatic. And, you know, I think I left the office with a few books that he gave me, and we spent the whole time just talking about.
Now that's a powerful notion, right? That's a powerful notion. When you look at what she's communicating, regardless of the legitimacy of it or not, when you look at what she's communicating, that is a powerful thing from the form of influence, right? You're looking at speaking somebody else's love language, right? Speaking from personal use, that I'm quite a big fan of the work of Edgar Allan Poe. But that goes back to Sherlock and the work of the Sherlock stories, predating with the stories that Poe did of Detective Dupin, which lead you into the famous stuff, you know, the Telltale Heart, Fall of the House of Usher, the Raven, and the like. And one of the first times that I met my now wife, I was just randomly humming to myself as I was making food, the Raven, but I'd watched it in James Earl Jones's voice, so I'm there going, "Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered." And she started saying the same words along with me. That's a powerful thing. But when you're dealing with celebrities, this information ain't secret. it ain't. Right? Again, no kind of objection, speculation, hearsay. But that's a fact. That kind of information isn't secret. I haven't Googled it, but I would bet a toe on the matter that if I Googled his interests, I could probably find some.
Things that we care about, and I was so surprised that somebody.
Do you see this app right here? It's called Audible.
care about
And
your
using
app.
just this little app on my phone, I was able to
You know, I knew who he was. I wasn't familiar, you know, I wasn't a fan of his work. I wasn't familiar with him, but I knew who he was, you know.
Okay. So, right, I'd bet my career on that being one of the most obvious lies that I've ever seen at all. I wasn't familiar with him. I wasn't a fan of him. With all of this kind of thing, with the asymmetry and the behaviour, the false attempts at presentation of the neck, far too much incongruence towards this, right? To have such an autonomic nervous arousal explosion that it's communicated this kind of disingenuous response. For you to continue with that narrative, you know, we spoke about the same poetry, obscure writers, and at the time I wasn't as familiar with him. You know, I didn't know a lot about his movies. That's the way that continues along those lines. But to increase that, I didn't know a lot about his movies, or right. That is the direction of energy, not in a spiritual sense. That is direction of energy from inside, going towards something that you want to get out. This is why vocal tonality in those that are experiencing stress goes up, because the tension causes it to do that. It's like pinching the end of a balloon. That ain't true.
You know, he's one of the most famous people in the world.
That
so
is
it's
true.
Already a weird thing to go and get called into his office. And, you know, I'm a no-name actor. I was 22, I think, and I thought it was unusual. It was weird because he was twice my age, and he's this world-famous actor, and here we are getting along about obscure books and weird, you know, old blues, and I thought it was remarkable. You know?
This is where you see the preparation again, in terms of overuse of the same words. It's always obscure. It's always not well known, right? This is the nature of the betrayal of lies in preparation, of stories. Sorry, excuse me, of stories in preparation. That you would talk about something in this way, that it would keep coming out in the same way. When, if you've told, you being the collective you, the person that is watching, when you tell a story naturally, you dot around from points all over the place. You might communicate the same details, but it will be through the same through different words. Right? The words won't fall along a scripted notion.
You know, I just hadn't really, I thought it was unusual and remarkable. I left there just feeling like, wow.
So did there come a time that you learned that you were going to be cast for the role in the Rum Diary?
Yes, a few days later, my agent.
What we can do as well is we can keep track of her breathing, because she's fond of the contemptive chin, fond of the contemptive buccanatopol. I'm not saying that it comes from a contemptuous emotional standpoint, but that's where its roots lie. However, that gives us a chance to follow her breathing pattern, to understand when she's swallowing because she's breathing too much and the mouth's getting dry. So you'll notice throughout all of this, 16 minutes of talking, we've not seen one thing eaten, we've not seen one glass of water taken, and the like. So the swallowing increases to compensate for anxiety that is being inhibited.
Said that Johnny's going to call you. We gave him your phone number. I was like, oh, okay. And shortly after, my phone rings, I pick it up, and I hear, this like deep voice on the other line, and he said, "You got the, you're it, kid. You're the dream. Hunter wrote this part, and you're the dream. You're it, kid." I was like,
And
amazed.
please describe for the jury what that means. What was the Rum Diary and this Hunter Thompson? What was the concept here, and what role were you playing?
Well, it was my understanding that he was bringing to life his late friend. And what he told me was that this character is supposed to be the dream woman, like the dream, American dream. And
Yeah.
So I knew what he meant. He indicated to me when he told me I got the role that I was that, that I was the dream kid. That's what he said.
So did there come a time that you started filming the Rum Diary?
Yes, I'm not quite sure how much. I think we started filming in maybe March of 2009.
And where did you film the Rum Diary?
We shot it in Puerto Rico.
And describe, if you can, the events of the filming.
What's interesting to note as well is Mr. Depp's breathing pattern. Though I've said that I don't like the fact that it keeps coming back and forth. It detracts from the nature of what we're supposed to do. But we can use it if it's being presented. You can see from how his suits fit him, that he's between those two shots that we saw earlier and what we're seeing now, his breathing starting to increase at this stage, right? So he's experiencing distress. He's experiencing anxiety. Right now, given the information that has been discussed regarding the interview, regarding the audition, the closest connection that we can make to that is it's regret, unless there is something else going on up here in terms of his knowledge of where the questions are going, which could also be the case. But this is the most strongly linked observation that you can make between those two areas, in that something emotional is being spoken about, has a reaction in somebody else.
In a place like Puerto Rico, it was beautiful. It takes place in the 50s, so everything really looked beautiful. Cars and clothing, the music. It was a very colorful shoot in general. I couldn't have asked for, a better scenario. I was on film. I mean, I was on set, reading my books, and occasionally Johnny would talk to me, and then he started to be really kind to me, like more open with me. When we'd have hot days filming, you know, there'd be this big SUV pull up, and a security guard would kind of usher me into this car, and it would have the AC blasting, and I'd be sitting in the back of the SUV just thinking what a strange experience the whole thing was. And, you know, we didn't really have a whole lot of interaction on set until we did a scene that...
Maybe you guys can tell me about this, because I don't know. It's just a thought that I've had based on how much video that I have watched of her over the years. Because like right the way back when I did the deposition follow-up part 2, it was like 19 hours worth of footage I watched of these two. And someone's presentation of cheekbones will change based on how much weight they put on or how much weight they lose. Okay? But the relative position of the size of these relative to where her eyes sit in terms of the bones that surround here, that appears to have changed, which is normally, based on, you know, my research in this area, it is plastic surgery. It is fillers. It is okay. So some of you guys in the comments, she's had fillers. Okay, cool. Thanks.
that involved kissing. We had a kissing scene, and it didn't feel like a normal. It didn't feel like a normal scene anymore. It felt more real. There are certain things that you do in the job to be professional, like when you have to do that sort of scene, and you don't like you. You don't use your tongue if you can avoid it. There's certain things that you do to just maintain a certain line, and it just felt like those lines were blurred. I mean, he grabbed my face and pulled me into him and really kissed me.
Oh, you poor woman. But you can see again the forced depression, the insight from the nose, the held breathing in the chest, right? If you hold this position for so long and hold your eyelids open, right, your lacrimant glands, as they're known within the eyes, become suffused because they're trying to re-moisten what you naturally want to do through blinking. You give the impression of a shrink-wrapped eyes. But I've seen the Rum Diary, and unless there were different takes used, that's not true.
But we were filming a scene.
Did he use his tongue?
Yes.
Okay. Did you celebrate your birthday while you were in Puerto Rico?
I did. I celebrated, I think, maybe my 23rd birthday there.
And what, if anything, did Mr. Depp do for your birthday?
Well, we were already kind of talking about books and poetry and things like that. He gave me a few really beautiful poetry books. And he gave me a bicycle, like a vintage bicycle, because at the time I was riding around on a bike, and I had a lot of time off since I was a smaller role in the movie. And yeah, I think that was it.
Okay. Now, did there come a time that you ended up visiting him in his trailer?
Yes, I think there was we would hang out if, after or in between.
So what we have here is a complete change in tack now. What we have is a complete change in tack, mostly because if you monitor the seat behavior so far in the 21 minutes that this testimonial has been going, there's been very little activity in this way, very little. So the most likely indication there is when you sit in a specific position for so long, your muscles start to go, God, I'm tired, or God, I'm uncomfortable, I just want to fidget, or I just want to move, right? more or less depending upon your structural requirements, whether you have any injuries or not. But if you sit in a specific position for so long without sleeping, you know your muscles will go, I have to move. I need to shape it up. I need to let blood flow freely. What we have here is the specific the specific drive towards, now we're full into this tactic that she's starting to position this directly towards her audience in this way.
In scenes or in between setups, we often were, talking about things and would continue the conversation into the trailer, often with the director. Bruce Robinson was his name. And then at one point, we talk about wine. It's another thing that Johnny and I shared in common, a love for wine, red wine. And we were talking about a kind of wine that I enjoyed, and I was, going on about how great this bargain wine was. And I didn't understand, how much more sophisticated Johnny's taste in wine was. So I was going on about the virtues of Malbec or something, and I brought him a bottle of this wine, and I set it down, and at some point I'm going back to get back to set, and he kind of kicked his foot up in the air and basically kind of lifted the back of my bathrobe up. And
Can I just stop you there? Why were you wearing a bathrobe?
because I was doing a scene, it was a period film, so it took place in the 50s. And so I had all of this old undergarments that are.
You hear the change? You hear the old drop down undergarments. We're now having to drive this emotional shift forward with the presentation of insinuating that he is committing lewd acts here. Consistent looks over towards the table, and if the shots towards Mr. Depp are anything to go on, he's yet to look up. He's yet to look up. Interesting to note that that's where her thoughts are going.
For that time era on. And the scene involved me changing. So I had all the costume on. And he kind of picked up the back of my robe with his boot. And I kind of turned around and laughed, giggled, I didn't know what to make of it at the time. And I just kind of giggled and batted it away playfully. And he kind of playfully kind of pushed me down on this bed sofa that was in his trailer, just playful and flirtatious. And he said, yum. And he kind of lifted up his eyebrows like that. And I just giggled, laughed it off, kind of batted him away, and, moved on, went back to set.
So much going on. The consistent changes in terms of emotional states, consistently playing towards the jury as well. You'll notice when she starts to lose her way in the story, she comes back to gain some kind of comfort with her lawyer, whatever her name is, and then coming back to try and gain that that recuperation moment that she's experiencing and losing her way. Okay, I know where I am. Back to how it's going over here. And everyone does it when you start to feel a moment of panic. This is why we have idiosyncratic self-soothing. This is why we hug ourselves in specific ways or move ourselves in specific ways to try and assuage the growing levels of discomfort that are there. But once that's happened, we can move forward in the way that we were trying to do previously. Same way as said here. Each time she goes back towards Elaine, okay? Each time she goes back towards Elaine, it's with the and then comes back towards the story here, right? Now, in this arena, right, with the roles reversed from previously, this would be when her side would be objecting all over this, because there is no evidence, there is no proof, there is no nothing to go alongside this. It is merely speculation, right? Her non-verbals would certainly indicate that it's complete bullshit, but that's not to say that there is an exact science going on here. It's not an equation that you can put this in and get the same thing out every time, like a Pinocchio effect. Those don't exist in people reading. And if you come across people telling you that they do, they're lying to you as well, for the sake of for the sake of views. But what we can do is take each one of the markers, explain every single one of them, try to disprove them as much as we possibly can, and if that can't happen, then we arrive at a conclusion, as we can here. Okay? So that would be strong indications that that didn't happen. And if you look at personal perception on the way that stories can be told, which is why Heard's team was so bloody infamous for objecting all over the place. It was a comedian telling the story, funny enough, but if you look at something Bill Burr remarked on in terms of no meaning no, right? If you look at no meaning no from a position of perception and circumstance, he was saying that no doesn't mean no. No means no, but no, come on, stop, you're so bad, right? That has a different perception at that time, so that when somebody reads that back later, it can be read as, no, come on, stop, you're so bad, right? This is why evidence is such an important part. This is why objections exist for matters like this.
And were you in a relationship at that time?
I was.
Okay. And was Mr. Depp in a relationship at that time?
That was my understanding, yeah.
Okay.
Distance in language. Distance in language. That was my understanding. Yeah. To the best of my knowledge, Your Honor. Yeah. It's an exclusionary principle.
And did anything else of significant happen during that time period while you were filming with Mr. Depp, other than what you've told us?
We just had this, it was a friendship, flirtatious thing. I felt chemistry. I felt this other thing that went.
Okay, so we're at 24 minutes now. What we'll do is we'll skip it on. We'll try and double it, and we'll see what we're doing with. So we'll come to about kind of 45 minutes, see what we're dealing with from there. Oh, boom! What a guess.
Johnny.
Straight in for adverts.
On
Come
Lone
on.
Ranger in some part of the Southwest.
Do you see this app right here? It's called Audible. And using just this little app on my phone, I was able to...
I think it was Colorado. He gave her this beautiful turquoise necklace, and I mean, they were definitely taken by him.
And what, if any...
Whoever was definitely taken by him, I would presume, following the line of inductive reasoning, that the him would be Johnny in this scenario. She didn't like that. She didn't like that whatsoever. Definitely taken by him, right? That's the sign of regret, guilt over jealousy in that particular scenario.
The relationship had Mr. Depp forged with Whitney by this time, your sister.
I believe the relationship came a little bit later as they got to know each other, but he did the same thing with my sister and just really found a bond with them that, was he tried to do anything and everything he could to make them feel like special, and they did. My mom, my dad, and my sister.
Did you see that as well? Anything and everything he could to make them feel special. Freeze that moment. That's a pretty clear emblem of an emotional state right there.
And what, if any, relationships did Mr. Depp form with your friends?
Well, Johnny's so generous and can be this really, like, overly generous almost, like showering you with gifts and compliments and just, I mean, like, you know, and he has access and means to really, you know, we're not talking about giving you a card. We're like talking about just these like extravagant trips or these extravagant gestures, and it's a lot. And he did that with my close friends. I'm relied heavily on my friends, and had a pretty strong support network.
That was interesting. Relied heavily. Asymmetry to the behavior. Not a good sign in someone being completely authentic.
Network with them, and he really just showered them with generosity and love and light, and invited them to come to these exotic places and flew people here and there. I mean, he's incredibly generous.
So going back to the filming of The Lone Ranger, what, if anything, did Mr. Depp do with respect to a horse?
Objection leading.
What, if anything?
Overruled.
Johnny at one point insisted on buying me a horse, and I, of course, said that's extravagant.
Here we go. The change in breathing. Here we go. Lips are pulled. There is the forcing of the emotional state right there.
There's no way I could accept that. That's how will I take care of that? Or, you know, it's so extravagant. So I said no, of course. Eventually, he got a hold of my dad and worked it out with my dad, like what kind of horse to buy, and then showed me a picture of this horse and said, "It's yours. It's coming here." I think it was being transported, and he said, you know, that he had my dad's help on it, picking out. And, you know, I grew up on my dad's horses. You know, I grew up riding with my dad. So, you know, I had resisted for, I think, about like a month and a half or something, of him kind of bringing up the idea and me saying, that's a crazy gift. No, thank you. No, that's incredibly generous, but I couldn't accept too.
I mean, it's interesting to note that her verbal content is so positive regarding Mr. Depp in this scenario, which, for somebody to speak of their alleged abuser in this way, is interesting from an observational state. A couple of you in the comments as well, similar ideas. Now, if you look at recorded history in terms of discussions regarding abusers and abuse, you can speak of positivity with its view towards what it brings about and what it changes. You know, if you look at Cialdini's The Nature of Influence, this is something that IPV victims have suffered at the hands of. The nature of reciprocity and the showering of gifts is on the understanding of other things. This is how they have the expectancy to extort favours and the like in that scenario. But to consistently and continually speak of somebody in this way, interesting. No?
All of a sudden I had a cult.
So, so let's take you through 2012 and your relationship. Could you just describe for the jury a little bit about how that
change in emotional state begets water? Now, I've skipped out 20 minutes or so. This could be the first sip. It could not. But at this stage, what we have is the breathing and the states that have been shifted through, requiring liquid.
that relationship evolved through 2012?
It was always intense. It didn't become intense. It almost started that way. When I was with him, you know, I felt that electricity in my body. I felt like butterflies. I couldn't, you know, I couldn't
You can tell where her position is as well in terms of who she's thinking to direct it at. Is the lean on the left arm, pointing towards them. So I'm now to talk about my story pointing this way, because that's where it has to be driven. This is when the body starts to, the mind starts to lead the body that way.
See straight, practically. It was just, I was head over heels in love, and he felt like that to me. He felt like he was also in love. I didn't feel like he was faking it. I felt like what we had, it felt like to me at the time, there wasn't any love like that, and then he started to kind of do this thing again where he'd disappear and he'd come back. And I remember at first when he first started drinking, I didn't really think much of it, but all of a sudden the behavior kind of started to go in line with the disappearing, and he'd come back and he'd just be different. And I'd say something and he'd accuse me of saying something else or saying it in a different way, or he would, it was mostly my clothing at the time and me working. That was the main thing. Like, I found myself trying to not talk about auditions because it would change the mood so dramatically.
And yet he helped you to get Aquaman. Interesting. But this is the nature of drug abuse, right? Which he's been very candid about. In that I may be paraphrasing him at this stage, but the only person I have ever abused is myself. I think he said that, or words to those effect. But this would happen, and bears no relevance or relationship towards his physicality at this stage.
I tried to, he would make these comments about, whoring myself out, but do so in the context of me acting, and he would talk about other actresses who do my role in this way where they were worthless whores, that they were fame hungry, expletive, just this. The point is, it felt really dirty to be an actor. Never mind that he was one. It was dirty that I wanted to do this job that I wanted to do, and I was doing the job of an actress. It was everything every time I was walking out of the house, he would ask me, "That's really what you're wearing, kid?"
Which is something that you could take out of well, I hope to God this book that I'm about to make up doesn't exist, the Abuser's Handbook, right? If you read enough studies and research, even demographics, statistics within the area of domestic violence, there are a number of behavioral points that come up in terms of the questioning of clothing, the questioning of life choices, the questioning of words, the questioning of everything, the constant nipping at the heels over everything. It's textbook at this stage. But again, that's not to say that it didn't happen. But from her non-verbals, it certainly indicated that it didn't. When you pull something up so specifically caricaturized from background, from research, from studies, when you pull up these areas, that calls into question the legitimacy of the completion of it, right? It would be like if you ever watched a talk show where some guy's on there being accused of cheating, and he would say, "I did not have sexual relations with that woman." That's the same kind of notion. Everybody has been alerted to, distancing language, non-contractions and the like, thanks to Bill Clinton's lie. So it forms a caricature, and you can pull that information in for use when you need it.
Oh, I see. I wore a dress to an event once, and I felt beautiful in it. Like, stupid as that sounds, I felt pretty in this dress I picked out, and I showed him because it's a carpet, it's red carpet, so it's like, publicized, and I kind of thought it was weird. He wasn't saying anything about it. I left him to go do this red carpet, and I was like, "Did you see the event I went to?" Basically, I felt pretty, and I thought, like, "Did you see that?" I wanted him to say something about that, I guess.
Which is a remark on nothing other than being unaware. I've done that several times with women in my life. Not noticed, and I work in the world of noticing everything in details, right? But there has been a number of times where I haven't noticed that a new dress was worn, or that you feel particularly good in whatever you're wearing, right? But I operate under the opinion that you are an adult, and if there is something on your mind, you will talk to me. Not so you can hold it over somebody's head later. Right? That is emotional blackmail. That is what she's doing. You can't punish somebody for something that they didn't know, or at the very least weren't aware of. Right? If you felt pretty, awesome. There's no taking away from that. And if you felt pretty in your dress, mint. Not specifically to you, Miss Heard, but if anybody, right? We all have those moments where we feel a little bit down about ourselves and the way that we look. But if there is something that you feel good in, mint, right? You rock it, whatever you're doing, wherever you're going. But if you want to have that discussion with somebody else about it, ask them directly in the way that grown-ups do.
And he said, well, this is after he stopped talking to me for some time, didn't tell me why. When he came back in my life, he wouldn't explain why he was acting different. He just kind of acted mad at me, didn't know what I had done wrong. And when I brought up the dress and the event, because it was an event to support a charity I was really involved with at the time, and I said, did you see that thing? And he said, yeah, I think the whole world saw that kid. That's how they'll remember you. That's how the world will remember you. And I was like, oh, come on. I mean, it's like, but I felt good in it. I felt good. And he said, yeah, kid, that's what you're putting out there in the world. No one will ever forget that. And that's all they'll see you as. That's what you wanted. That's what you were going for. My dress was low cut. I get it. It's low cut.
Which is a projection. Right? If you look at that under a different emotional spin, it's the same thing I was mentioning before. Right? That's what you're putting out in the world. That's what they'll remember you for. Bringing her up. If you feel, I'm seeing your positivity, that's what they'll remember you for. But if you're projecting a point of insecurity, that's what you'll focus on. In the same way, if you look at an insult, it's only insulting if it's something you feel personally bad about. That's how an insult functions. So for somebody to, I'll give you something from my childhood. I used to get bullied something awful because I have a very large cranium. My skull is huge compared to my body. So there would be people running about, he's got a big head, he's got a big head. It's true. I do. Very astute, but well observed. The attempt to insult, because I don't feel bad about it, doesn't work. Right? As is said here, she feels pretty in it, but still a requirement of validation from others. So it's not authentic. So there is projecting onto others. Even if you look at the moments where he come back and he wouldn't speak, it might be 100% directed towards her that he doesn't want to talk about it, in which case is psychologically unhealthy for a relationship. But you've also got the undisputed truth at this moment that he is into his drug addiction, that he is into his drinking and the like, and is abusive himself, which comes from a real kind of angry opinion directed towards yourself, and sometimes you don't want to talk about it, right? Which can lead the projection of others to be like, why are you in a mood with me? I'm not. And you can't deny that without it inciting further rage, because one is projecting into a state that doesn't require any projection, right?
But I felt, I felt really embarrassed and horrible that I wore that. I felt like, how could I have made that choice? Of course, he's right. You start to believe it. I started to believe that made a lot of sense. Of course.
If you look at the kind of rationale behind low cut things, right? There are the ladies that have larger chests versus the ladies that don't, that argue that the larger chested ladies wearing something low cut makes it look flirtier, makes it look sexier, right? But that's just down to the opinion of those viewing it. When you are feeling that yourself, that's the change, right? If you're wearing something low cut, because you're wearing something low cut, it's either because you like this, you like the way that you look in it, you want to project that area, whatever it is, which is cool, right? So this in and of itself should highlight that the flaws in this character are more to do with her perceptions of the quote-unquote reality of the situation regarding anything else. Right? For guys that, and I've heard the arguments, for guys that have a problem with low-cut things being worn, it is the argument that you're trying to put sexualized properties of yourself out there towards other people, to try and gain attention towards other people when, you are in a relationship with me. Why should you be vying for the eyes of others? But if it is that you're proud of your body and you want to go and show it off and flaunt it, crack on, because the two are very different. You see, which is why it comes back to her views of herself in this scenario, right?
But it didn't stop with that. It was clothing in general. And when I walked out of the house, it wasn't just like, hey, you're not allowed to wear that. It was like, oh, really? That's what you're wearing. No wonder you get cast in those roles. No wonder you that's what you are. That's what you're making it.
Which, again, steeps into her projections. That's what you are. That's what you're making it. Did you see how the dialect changed? From, oh, that's what you're going out as, to that's what you are. It changed and it lowered with additional expression. Hey, Mia. I've just seen it, just looking back at the comments. Nice to see you guys. Projections, all of it. Great. I think she left him to go to the event. She would have been dressed while he was there, so we would have already seen the dress. Right? so much stuff going on that you could just absolutely pull this all apart with.
And it continued. And then
here we go.
Then there would be a blow up. And at first it was just to throw something,
in again,
smash some things.
In again, tighter, in again, tighter, lip bite, right? So we are modifying as we're going through tension, through anxiety.
It loves to smash up a place, an apartment, furniture. That's what it started with. Glass. Threw glass at me, and I remember it was summer. And he just threw this glass across the kitchen, and it didn't hit me, but it shattered behind me, and I remember thinking that it very easily could have hit me. And that, calling me a whore, it didn't start with using the whore word, it was just comments.
Which, if you connect the dots, might be, and I can only say might at this stage, might be her feelings about herself when she was stripping. That's why she's focusing on that.
Until it would escalate. And then I started to notice the pattern of escalation where he'd throw glass or turn over a table. Then he would hit the wall, and then he'd hit the wall really close to my head. You know, like when I'm standing there, you know, just hit the wall screaming at me. But then he would disappear and get clean and sober, and he'd come back and tell me that he was done drinking, he was over it, he was done, cleaned himself up, he'd done it before, and he'd do it again. And then he would go back to this, like, wonderful, like, almost like just unreal, like, but real, you know, but unbelievably nice, sensitive, kind, warm, generous, interesting, funny man that I love.
Again, how are you going to talk about your alleged abuser that way? Other than to overstate the difference in character, to try and stretch apart the polarizing axes of the behavior that you've seen, to try and paint him as this menace in the scenario.
Loved. And he would make me feel so loved. Like I would feel so distant from that thing that was so scary that I would not even recognize it too. And that was how, you know, our relationship kind of started to develop in that first year.
Do you remember the first time that he physically hit you?
Yes.
Please tell the jury about it.
It was it's seemingly so stupid, so insignificant. I will never forget it. It changed my life. I was sitting on the couch, and we were talking. We were having a normal conversation, you know, just, there was no fighting, no argument, nothing. And he was drinking, and I didn't realize at the time, but I think he was using cocaine, because it was like there was a jar of cocaine out on the table. I realize that sounds weird, but it was like an actual vintage jar of it. But I didn't see him use it at the time, so I didn't really factor that in. I just, you know, he's drinking and we're talking, and there's music playing, and he's smoking cigarettes, and we're sitting next to each other on the couch. And I asked him about the tattoo he has on his arm. And to me, it just looked like black marks. I didn't know what it said. It just looked like muddled, faded tattoo that was hard to read. And I said, what does it say? And he said it says wino. It says wino. And I didn't see that. I thought he was joking.
Interesting that you're going through a lot of scene setting, right? A lot of scene setting in chronology, right? Now, when you look at the notion of prepared stories, it is how did he hit me? You start at this, and you might work backwards to a few antecedents, and then go back to the actual physical violence, what happened in the aftermath, and then this bit that you remembered before. That is how stories are told. It goes back and forth all over the way. And yet, we've got the story of them being on the sofa, story of the drinking, story of the cigarette, story of the tattoo, story of the jar. Some of you guys, I got a jar of dirt, and a great scene in this way, which doesn't happen for somebody experiencing as well, reliving trauma. You get in towards a few moments of what led up to it, speaking about it, and carry on. There is no need, no requirement to lay the groundwork so that everybody has the understanding of this, other than to purposefully play your tactic, or to get into some storyline that you are developing.
Because it didn't look like it said that at all, and I laughed. It was that simple. I just laughed because I thought he was joking, and slapped me across the face. And I laughed. I laugh because I didn't know what else to do. I thought, this must be a joke. This must be a joke. Because I didn't know what was going on. I just stared at him, kind of laughing still, thinking that he was going to start laughing too to tell me it was a joke, but he didn't.
So there's questions that he has in his head at this stage. If you look at the eyebrows and if you look at the way the lips are kind of pulsating, it's a precursor to a what? What? There's something that he's noticed that doesn't add up, or he just disagrees with the fact that it's happening.
He said, you think it's so funny. You think it's funny, bitch. You think you're a funny bitch. And he slapped me again. Like, it was clear it wasn't a joke anymore. And I stopped laughing, but I didn't know what else to do. You know, I didn't know what to do. You would think you would have a response, but I, as a woman, had never been hit like that. I'm an adult, and I'm sitting next to the man I love, and he slapped me for no reason, it seemed like, and I missed the point. It was that stupid. Second slap, I know he's not kidding, but I don't know what else to say or do, so I just stared at him.
If you notice the way that she mentioned the whole bitch comment, it was a recognition that she'd said it. Yeah, bitch. Yeah, bitch. With the initial eyes widening after the fact. Temporary leakage in terms of a moment of fear would be too strong of a word, but a moment of uh-oh in that scenario.
I didn't say anything. I didn't react. I didn't move or freak out or defend myself or say, what are you doing? You're crazy. I just stared at him because I didn't know what else to do. And he slaps me one more time. Hard.
So are we into 3 times now? Or twice? Or... Huh. A lot of people in the comments as well mentioning that her father has been a convicted abuser of her as well, which again would call into question her recollection of this particular event, which again would speak to the things that I mentioned earlier in terms of the escape from the home that she's using as a way to try and humanize herself in this scenario. But, you know, again, trying to actively disprove your own observations, you could make the argument that the two are different because one is her father, one is her fella, her boyfriend, husband. I don't know what they are at this stage in the timeline. But the amount of stories going on, it may as well be a multiverse. I mean, that is an argument that you could make. But to reference the whole quality of I've never been slapped like that as a woman, within that light, would indicate that you would likely have been slapped that way as a young woman or as a child or younger, which might be the link to past trauma and the reason why you didn't say anything if it happened. But the verbal incongruences in line with the physical modification of her body, it takes away from that. So we can't actively disprove that observation, which gives it a bit more credence as being not altogether true.
I lose my balance. At this point, we're sitting next to each other on the edge of the couch, or I was on the edge of the couch.
What? I lose my balance, but I'm on the edge of the. We're on the edge of the. Huh? That doesn't make sense.
And I'm all of a sudden realizing that the worst thing has just happened to me that could possibly happen to you. I realized that I wish so much he had said he was joking, because it didn't hurt. didn't physically hurt me. I was just sitting there on this carpet,
go.
looking at the dirty carpet, wondering how I.
So she's on the floor now, and not this sofa. So she's lost the balance, sitting on the edge of the sofa and being on the floor. Was she standing on the edge of the sofa, and the slap knocked her off? Okay. Not unless, you know, it's a reverberation through the time slap continuum. If you've ever watched How I Met Your Mother, you'll get the reference.
I wound up on this carpet, and why I never noticed that the carpet was so filthy before, and I just didn't know what else to do. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to react. I just sat there thinking, how much time do I have till I figure out what I need to do? Because, God, did he just hit me? No, I didn't want to leave him. I didn't want this to be the reality. I didn't want to have the man I was in love with. I know you don't come back from that. You know, I'm not dumb. I know you can't hit a woman. You can't hit a man. You can't hit anyone. You can't just...
This is where somebody needs to put in a video of the audios from his testimony, regarding saying, I was punching you, but I didn't deck you. And apparently she knows that, but oh dear. I could swear that it might have been Isaac that was talking about maids that were in the house. So either they're terrible, or, you know, it's a really old carpet.
hit somebody because I knew it was wrong, and I knew that I had to leave him. And that's what broke my heart, because I didn't want to leave him. I thought if I got up out of that room, I'd leave the best thing that ever happened to me.
That's a great pause. That's a great pause. But she's doing well in terms of trying to crank those out. She's doing well. The eyes have become shrink wrapped. The laboured breathing has given way to the dry eyes to shrink wrap that notion. Tanya, there is a video. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I figured somebody would have. But it's never left that modification area. She'll have the notions when she comes back to tell the easy storylines about things that happened, and then boom, we're back into creation and modification in this area. Beaker. We shouldn't laugh. We shouldn't laugh. But that's spot on. It's a great likeness. She does look like Beaker. Interesting.
And I wish I could sit here and say I stood up and I walked out of that house and I drew a line and I stood up for myself. But I was just looking at the dirty carpet, trying to will myself to get up, to walk out of the door because I knew I needed to. And now
again, if you look at the research, again, from the people that have gone through this, there is the discussion of picking focal points to get you through pieces of trauma. Right? When people are abused in a particular room, they might focus on a painting that's on the wall, or a song that's going on in the background that eventually leads to a kind of a neural link towards this rough time that they've gone through, right? Of a dirty carpet, which you could argue is why it's being mentioned. But for a celebrity household to be dirty with cleaners calls that into question. Doesn't immediately disprove one way or the other, but it calls it into question. And when you're dealing with somebody's veracity regarding their statement, that's all you need to question somebody's authenticity in this moment. That's all you need.
I really slowly, I stood up and I remember looking at him in the eye.
Which again, sorry, it's just occurred to me. If you look at projections, projections of self and of felt state difficulties, being the self-made person that she is, going on all of these auditions and climbing the ladder and feeling so independent, she's let her father take away her strength, her power. How can I take away somebody else's power that I'm jealous of? Just saying. Just saying. There is often I believe it's referred to as displacement. When it comes to these kinds of things, if you can't get back at people who have brought you some kind of transgressions previously, then you seek to find related concepts.
And just looking at him, frankly, because I didn't know what else to do. And before I know it, he starts crying. And, you know, like, I had never seen an adult man cry. I didn't even really see my dad cry at my grandma's funeral. You know, it's weird. And he...
See, this is where I'm gonna take umbrage with that, right? And it may be the only time that this could be ever considered irritating. Just in terms of verbal content, because it's a direct leak in terms of her position of belittling somebody that has experienced emotions, right? She is leaking her true standpoint in terms of where she is at that time. There is a vitriolic sentiment behind that in terms of a male displaying emotions like that being weird. That's interesting, given what we know at this stage, because it was proven through the audio recordings and the like, that she went to great lengths to belittle and demean him. There's a leak right from the horse's mouth, so to speak, in terms of how she views that. I'm taking everything out of the scenario there. I'm taking everything out. It is just the concept of her finding males crying, adult males, that she had to specify that you would grow out of that, apparently, because it's okay to do it as a kid. Adult males crying is weird. Yet again, we are an hour into this with 20 minutes skipped in the middle, and it's not going well, Miss Heard. It's not going well.
He's crying. Tears, I mean, just falling out of his eyes. He gets down on his knees and he grabs my hands and he's touching my hands and he's saying to me, I will never do that again. I'm so sorry, baby. I put the fucker away. I thought I killed it and it's done. I thought I put the monster away and I've done it before. It's done. But on his knees. And I didn't have words. I didn't know what to say. I just remember thinking that it was just, he was crying. He seemed so sorry, but I knew I couldn't just forgive him because right? That means it will happen again, no? You know, like I've seen the health class.
Trying to engage in dialogue. Now you can be in a situation whereby you don't have the opportunity to speak to somebody. I could say to you guys here, you know, if you look at the importance of phrasing that questions that way, it becomes pretty significant, no? You answer these types of things in your head. It's like an unconscious reaction. The way that 90% of Westerners, not an exact number, not crunched it, but when you stick your hand out to 90% of Westerners, the immediacy of the response, given that it's so built into our society, is to go bang, like this, and shake. It's a reaction that happens. Same thing is there.
Videos, like everyone else. And I got up in my car, I walked to the car, I didn't say anything. I made a point to not say, oh, it's okay, or anything like that. I just didn't say anything. I got up, I went to the car, I sat in my car, and I felt like I sat there forever. I didn't want to turn the key. I just leaned my head up against the window, and I remember just seeing my breath on the windshield, you know, on the glass of the window of the door, just seeing my breath and trying to will myself to have the strength to.
Now again, if you look at Dr. Curry's scientific, by her own words, I've not read the same thing she has, and I'm by nowhere near as qualified. But if you look at the statements that she made regarding histrionic descriptions and animated and overtly caricaturized displays, here, fully refuting the PTSD claims, fully presenting the various personality conflictions that she has going on, and further cementing the kind of separatist notion that she has regarding genders and the roles that they should play. So what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to pause this here for now, and we're going to pick part 2 up later on this evening, because I have a podcast stream later this evening with Adam and me. We'll be coming back, and we'll be picking up right from here later on this evening. Okay? So that's what's happening. That's what we are going to do. That's what we are going to get involved in, and talk about and fully break down this detail, because with it being close to a 3-hour detail, and the ones that I did for Mr. Dombrowski and Isaac as well, they were over an hour in and of itself. So I'm conscious with these, when you're looking at content angle, that if I'm going to try and put across some information for you to take away, it has to be in chunks that are manageable. And very few people will be able to go through something like this for hours and 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 hours. Just won't happen. So I want to split this up for you. So we're going to bring it back with Adam later on this evening, and we're going to break this down from here, from this point. All right, guys. So I appreciate you all for turning up, and thank you for all of the information that you've been posting in the comments as well. I'm gonna read through that too, just to have a catch up, and see what I have missed, and see what I don't know. To try and further educate myself on the matter, and we'll pick this back up with you guys later on this evening. But thank you to everybody for stopping by and listening. I have to I have to analyze the bee sting. Oh, from the video, from the TikTok video. Okay, then we'll try and bring those up. We'll try and bring those up as well. I'll try and find a couple of good ones. Right, guys, I'm going to love you and leave you, and I'll see you later on this evening. All the best. See you soon.